Good evening, everyone. We begin the readout tonight with unprecedented action by the House Judiciary Committee, the House January 6th Committee, in the investigation into the insurrection. Today, the committee took the historic step of issuing subpoenas to their own House colleagues, including the House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy, along with four others, Congressman Scott Perry, Jim Jordan, Andy Biggs, and Mo Brooks. All had previously been asked to voluntarily appear before the committee. It comes as the panel steps up its efforts ahead of the public hearings that are planned for this summer. In a statement, Committee Chair Benny Thompson acknowledged the previous requests for cooperation, saying, regrettably, the individuals receiving subpoenas today have refused, and we're forced to take this step to help ensure the committee uncovers facts concerning January 6th. Now, there is precedent for issuing subpoenas to members for matters of ethics, but not for anything like what happened today. The fact is, you really don't see the sitting leader of a political party being subpoenaed by Congress. But it was seen as necessary given Kevin McCarthy's extensive conversations with the former president on January 6th, including a phone call as the mob laid siege to the Capitol. Now, while Kevin McCarthy has so far failed to cooperate, he was very forthcoming on the day of the attack in an interview with CBS News.
I've spoken to the president. I asked him to talk to the nation to tell him to stop this. I was very clear with the president when I called him. This has to stop, and he's got to go to the American public and tell them to stop this.
Leader McCarthy, the President of the United States has a briefing room steps from the Oval Office. The cameras are hot 24/7, as you know. Why hasn't he walked down and said that now?
I conveyed to the president what I think is best to do, and I'm hopeful the president will do it.
And thanks to audio obtained by New York Times reporters Jonathan Martin and Alex Burns, we know that McCarthy revealed even more days later in a call with the House Republican Conference.
But let me be very clear to all of you, and I've been very clear to the president. He bears responsibilities for his words and actions. No ifs, ands, or buts. I asked him personally today, does he hold responsibility for what happened? Does he feel bad about what happened? He told me he does have some responsibility for what happened. And he needs to acknowledge that.
Of course, just 2 weeks later, McCarthy went down to Florida to break bread with the disgraced former president and quickly changed his tune. Since then, he has been determined to railroad any legitimate investigation. As for the others, the committee wants testimony from Jim Jordan regarding his communication with Trump and participation in a meeting, Scott Perry over his involvement in installing Jeffrey Clark as acting attorney general, and Andy Biggs for his involvement in planning the rally that day and for seeking a potential presidential pardon for efforts to overturn the election. As for Mo Brooks, who also is named in the rally planning and who gave a speech urging supporters to start taking down names and kicking ass. The committee is also interested in his public claims that the former president urged him to rescind the election, remove Biden, and reinstall Trump as president. It should come as no surprise that all five responded by questioning the legitimacy of the committee while not explicitly saying whether or not they would appear. The question now is, what's the recourse if they refuse? Today, Chairman Thompson expressed caution at the prospect of holding the five in contempt of Congress.
What are the other steps other than contempt that you take?
Well, obviously, we're exploring a number of ways we could. Contempt would be one. We have not talked about it. There's referrals to ethics. There are some civil other things we could look at, but we've not put anything from a decision standpoint before the committee. We're just taking it one step at a time. We hope everybody complies.
Joining me now, Representative Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania, a member of the House Judiciary Committee and an impeachment manager last year. Elie Mystal, justice correspondent for The Nation. And David Jolly, former Republican congressman who's no longer affiliated with the party. Congresswoman Dean, I'm going to start with you. You know, it used to be that we just assumed that a subpoena meant you appear and that there really wasn't any question about it. It's only in the Trump era where we learned that apparently they're optional for some people if they just decide not to do them, that there aren't really consequences for it. But let's talk about Kevin McCarthy for just a moment, because his views, he says his views of the committee haven't really changed, but they kind of have. Take a look.
Look,
My view on the committee has not changed. They're not conducting a legitimate investigation. It seems as though they just want to go after their political opponents.
Would you be willing to testify about your conversation with Donald Trump on January 6th if you were asked by an outside commission?
Sure.
You
Next
would.
question.
So he has expressed willingness. I mean, that seems to be what that would be normal, right? You're supposed to comply if you get a subpoena. I can't imagine just blowing off a subpoena. But what do you make of the fact that none of these subpoenaed members so far have expressed a willingness to come forward?
Well, good to be with you and Ellie and David. I have to say, Joy, I have been shocked, but I shouldn't be all along. I was there on January the 6th. It was not an ordinary day. It was not a tourist event. It was not an ordinary day. It was outside our constitutional order on a magnitude that I don't think any of us has fully comprehended yet. So nobody is above the rule of law. Nobody is beyond his own oath. And yet we see with Mr. McCarthy this chronic flip-flopping. I really can't hold Mr. McCarthy to any of the words he speaks, because he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. What is more impressive to me, and what I think is more dire, is that the rule of law still matters in this country. January 6th marked a moment, and I believe the committee, when they come forward in June with the public hearings, will reveal how precariously close we came to losing our democracy. Mr. McCarthy, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Biggs, Mr. Jordan, Mr. Perry, all have information that is relevant, that is important for the committee to have, and they should have come forward day one, voluntarily. And now they're under subpoena. A subpoena has meaning, and it has the weight of the rule of law.
Well, does it, Ellie? I mean, are subpoenas optional? Because, you know, it's been a novel thing that we've discovered in the last 5 years that apparently some people think they are.
If nobody is above the law, I would like that to be proven. I would like somebody to prove that these people are not, in fact, above the law, because they've been acting like they're above the law this entire time. Joy, when you say you can't imagine what it must be like to just ignore subpoenas, that's all you're saying is that you can't imagine what it'd be like to be a Republican. Because all Republicans have done to this committee is just ignore the subpoenas, and nothing has happened to them. And so I say, and I'm being totally honest about this, if these 5 Republicans are going to ignore congressional subpoenas, and if the Democrats are not going to punish them severely for ignoring those subpoenas, then guess what? Congressional subpoenas do not matter for anybody anymore.
Right.
Because the only way to make it work is that if these people ignore subpoenas and get away with it, then everybody gets to ignore subpoenas and get away with it. Facebook, Twitter, Pookie from the block, nobody has to follow a subpoena anymore if these 5 people don't have to follow subpoenas. That's just how it has to work.
I mean, isn't it true that, right, could somebody that, Ellie, to stay with you for a moment, let's say they're in a robbery case or some other case or a bribery case or something, and they get subpoenaed, could they cite these members and say, subpoenas aren't real, they don't mean anything, I claim, I don't know, some sort of privilege, and I'm just not going to go. Like, can this be precedential?
So let's say that happened to me. I got subpoenaed tomorrow. I said, no, I'm going to cite the Kevin McCarthy, Steve Bannon exception to subpoenas. I could make that argument from jail, because that's how it, like, I'd be writing my arguments from jail, being like, I don't have to support the subpoena, right? And what hasn't happened to these Republicans yet is that they haven't had to do their arguments from jail because the Department of Justice, the law enforcement branch of our government, has not taken the steps to enforce the subpoenas from the January 6th committee. Yeah. And that is where we are.
That's where the problem seems to be. David, thank you for being here. So Kim Well, she's a constitutional law professor. She laid out some of the options that Congress really could theoretically take. And she wrote this in The Atlantic. First, Congress could vote to ask the Justice Department to criminally prosecute someone for being in contempt of Congress. They've done that before with Mark Meadows. Nothing's happened. Secondly, it can rely on its inherent authority to have the sergeant at arms for the House detain, bring to the floor, and ultimately imprison the violator. Or third, it can file a civil action in federal court, secure an order directing compliance, and ask the court to issue a contempt of court citation if the order is violated. I cannot imagine, and I don't know if you can, having served with these Democrats, any Democrat doing any of those 3, David, but I certainly can imagine if Kevin McCarthy becomes Speaker because Republicans take over the House, them using number 2 repeatedly after subpoenaing for nothing, just making up kangaroo court charges against Speaker Pelosi, who would then be Minority Leader Pelosi, and Adam Schiff, and anyone else they don't like. Maybe Congresswoman Dean here for talking out of turn in their mind about their insurrection, and putting them in jail. Isn't it the case that if Republicans were to get back control of the Congress, they will have a kangaroo court, make up something they want to investigate Democrats for, and they're going to use these options, and they are much more likely to see prosecutions of Democrats because that won't look as partisan if this same attorney general is in place?
Look, I would think history suggests that's true, Joy, and I would also point to Kevin McCarthy's own words that he's going to seek retribution against fellow colleagues. I also think you'll see the Republican caucus move quickly to probably try to impeach Joe Biden on something yet to be determined. But I think they are poised for significant retribution. And I think the important question here is to recognize this kind of in 2 parts. The first part today was groundbreaking. To have a committee issue subpoenas to sitting members of Congress, one who happens to be a party leader, that in itself is groundbreaking. The question, though, then is enforcement, because they will not cooperate. I know Kevin McCarthy, he's probably laughing about this tonight. He's not worried about it. And so the question is, will Congress be prepared to take some level of enforcement? That will be a political question. Perhaps Ms. Dean could provide insight on. And then what is that enforcement action? It would be a big lift on the legal, but it also depends on what the committee believes that these members know. Do they have information related to criminal culpability? Because if so, that's groundbreaking as well. It steps out of kind of the speech and debate and traditional privileges and protections of members of the House. And I think we don't know yet what the committee knows, but we're going to find out pretty soon. And it's the reason that Kevin McCarthy and others shouldn't be laughing. They should be considering cooperating.